Hi everyone, hope you're well. I'm in my second year of electrical engineering, and I'm just now into my second semester. We've got like 3 semesters this year, so I'm in the process of planning for my second semester. I just had my first day yesterday, and so I realized I hadn't had time to set up a plan yet, and so I thought I'll take you along on the journey with me as to how I go about setting up my plan for the semester. So in my first year of electrical engineering, I actually did very well. Ended up getting 83% across all my modules, and so I'm hoping for a similar result this year. First semester was a bit difficult with the whole, adapting to online, everything online, but I'm hoping I at least got 70% on those two modules. So last semester I did electrical and electronics principles 2, and I also did instrumentation and control. So this semester I actually have analog electronics and communication systems, and then in the final semester of the year I'm going to do embedded systems. And due to the health climate thing with 2020, then I may or may not be doing my engineering design project 2 module, but that's to be determined. Okay, so the plan for this semester is basically just to prepare myself for communication systems and embedded systems. So I'm just going to run through how I do that, my process. I've already done a fair bit already. So as you can see here, this app that you're seeing here, this is Notion. If you haven't heard of it, I definitely highly recommend it. It's an absolutely fantastic app. I use it actually for all aspects of my life, and I document literally everything. I think one of my favorite YouTubers, Ali Abdal, he calls it his second brain. So I enjoy it. So here I have my studies page where I keep everything study related. So I've got all my first year stuff. I've got third year final project ideas that I'm coming up with, and then I've got all my second year stuff all right here. So probably the main part of my study plan is this studies to-do list. So as soon as my lecturer says, Hamed, you need to do this, you got to do that, this is very important, whatever it is, I immediately come to my to-do list and put it on here. So you can see already just from my first day at university, this is all of my to-do list so far. So I had to finish writing my notes for my communication module, which I finished. Then I've got to expand on those notes using some YouTube videos. So I'm going to start doing that. And I put it in order of stuffs to do. So at the moment, the last on the list is skim, read, and take notes of electronic devices and circuit theory book. So I've got all the chapters that I need to read. So for example, it's my lecture for my communication module recommended reading chapter 3 and 4. So I've put that on here. For analog electronics, then my lecture recommended I read the first 5 chapters. So I've put that on here. So I'm going to read those, take notes of them. And then I'm also going to skim read the whole entire book for my wireless communications network book. And then I'm also going to skim read the whole electronic devices and circuit theory book. So these are all on the to-do list. And actually, for example, here, the skim reading, I'll do that last. And then other things will, as things come up, for example, like I know today I'm going to get given my first worksheet for my analog electronics module. So I'll put that here, finish worksheet 1 for analog electronics. Right, and then I'll just constantly keep on adding. And what happened was at the end of my first semester, and even for the end of my first year, I had a whole long to-do list of like probably, 2, 3, 400 things, which shows you that they overload you a lot of electrical engineering. But I had a list of 2, 3, 400 things, and all of it ticked off. And as you're going through each week on week, and you're seeing all of these things ticked off, it's beautiful. It's really nice to see, honestly. And it just means that when I get overwhelmed, which literally every single semester I get overwhelmed, when I am overwhelmed, all I got to do is just come here and say, okay, what's next on the to-do list? And that's it. That's all I do. So let's now go into my analog electronics module. So the first thing I do here is I put the different subjects that I need to have on my reading list for me to either, possibly read up on, watch a YouTube video on, etc. And then what I do is I actually put front and center my assessments. So I want to know how I'm being assessed for this module and what I need to do. And I need to have the date. I want to have the date front and center so that every single time I log on to my Notion and I go onto this page, I'm seeing straight away, okay, my exam is on the 15th of March. Exams on the 15th of March. And so it constantly allows me to keep in perspective when my assessments are going to be. So let me do the same thing for my communication systems. So here at the top, I'll put assessment, and then I'll put report 50% and exam 50%. And when you learn the shortcuts inside Notion, honestly, it gets amazing. Okay, can't spell assessment. There you go. Okay, so I want to find out the date that both of these are due in. I remember my lecturer did mention it yesterday, so let's figure that out. Okay, so I can actually see here, this information I've copied from my university's VLE, which is their virtual learning environment. And I can see here the worksheet, which will be available. So, okay, the worksheet, which will be available from 9 a.m. Monday to 27th of January, is a series of questions about the fundamentals of transmission, which need to be answered as it states in the worksheet. This will need to be submitted by the 10th of February. Okay, so I've got, it's not a report, it's a worksheet, and that needs to be submitted by the 10th of the 2nd, 2021. And I know it's worth 50% of the module. And then I've also got an exam. Okay, so I've just gone onto my university's virtual learning website again, which I'll just show you what it looks like. Okay, so here's what the VLE looks like. I've just had to edit because I need to get rid of my lecturer's information. But you can see here, she's actually put on here saying that there will be, okay, so we will cover a lot of groundwork in this module. It's assessed mainly through a coursework, which is in fact a series of assessed worksheets with increasing challenges. There's also a lab-based exam, which will take place on the Monday, the 15th of March. So there you go. Cool. So what we're interested in there is 15th of March, 2021. So here now, 15th of March, 2021. Okay, so now you guys can clearly see communication systems. I know I've got a worksheet that's due in 10th of February, which is actually only a month away. And then I've got an exam 15th of March. And here for my analog electronics, I've got weekly reports, 50%. And then I've got an exam 15th of March, which is crazy that I hate, why do they give you 2 exams on the same day? Anyways. Okay, so thankfully this semester, both my analog electronics and my communications modules, both of them have all of the lectures released. So I can literally go on to all of them, and then I have all of what each lecture is going to be about. And that's very, very important to me because I at least, especially some of the words, I'm not even going to understand what they mean, like a Zener diode or a Scotty. No idea what a Scotty is. But at least just I make a list of what it is exactly that my lecturer is going to be teaching me. And so as I'm learning other things around the subject, or I'm watching YouTube videos and someone mentions, oh yeah, the Zener diode, I'll pay a bit more attention to it because I know, okay, I'm actually learning that week 7 of the module, for example. And I've actually got my Dropbox set up here. If I go to year 2 and then analog electronics, for example, I've got my lecture recordings, I've got a bunch of books, so and I want to make sure I set up my Dropbox folder. I want to have it very well organized. So, okay, so I know all of these files were from yesterday, which I downloaded, so I can put them into lecture 1, and then make a new folder for lecture 2. And so here, what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to take a look at what lecture 1 was about, which I know was diodes. All right, so here's my lecture 1, which we went through yesterday. So it was about doping, diodes, etc., PN junctions. So there was some specific stuff which I know I needed to work on. So let's do this. So we can put lecture 1, and then we can say PN junction diodes. So we can put diode characteristics. And so I'll just continue through like this, taking down what were all the main topics discussed in lecture 1 that I know I need to get solid on. Let me quickly do that. And there we go. So I finished literally writing out all of the main topics that were discussed in lecture 1, which as you can see is a lot. And so I'm just going to do this exact same thing for all of my lectures, both for analog electronics and then also likewise do the same for communication systems, which is actually a bit easier because my lecturer, she was nice enough to actually do it all of herself. So this is all quite chunky, as you can see, like there's a lot of text here. So I'm going to trim that down a little bit, get rid of some of the clunky words and just have just the topics themselves. All right, so I finished. So although for this semester, I've only actually got 8 weeks of teaching. So this is mostly based on last year's one. So I assume, the lecturer, he's got last year's content, he's going to have to adjust it. So It's down as like 11 lectures, but it'll end up being only 8. So there's only really 5 different topics that I'm studying. So semiconductors and diodes, so they're kind of, well, one topic. This next one, diode applications. Third is transistors. Fourth is amplification, so in different formats, but basically using transistors to amplify. And then lastly, op amps, which does include filters as well. So at least now I've got here, I know all of the different subjects that I'm going to be studying over the next 8 weeks. When you look at this, you might say, well, that's a crazy amount of topics to touch on. But I mean, for example, if all you did was watch an introductory video on each topic, I mean, you could do that within, a week or two. And so you'd at least have an introduction to every single topic, and then you can delve a lot deeper into some books and chapters on specific stuff. So that's my plan. Basically, my plan is to basically watch a video here or there, 1 minute, 2 minute, 4 or 5 minute video on YouTube for each one. And I mean, you'll be surprised after 8 weeks. Pretty much, I'd say after 8 weeks, probably 80% of this I'll have it in the bag, no problems. Maybe I might be a bit iffy with some of the calculations, but what I've found is that as long as I've understood the calculations at one point, I don't need to bother memorizing it. I'll just search up on Google what the calculation is, and I'll know exactly how to use it. So that's how I go about learning. And everything that I did from first year, I forgot all the calculations, but I can just Google it within a second, and I got the calculations there. So, all right, now, so I've finished doing that for analog electronics. Let's finalize it with communication systems and just literally sort out all of this and shorten it up into exactly the same as what I've did there for analog electronics. So I'm working my way through this, and I realized that the description that my lecturer gave, is not, it's a kind of more of a general overview than specific topics of what I'm actually going to be studying. So I just put everything under a lecture description. And this is what's really good about Notion. You've got all of these different things that you can do, which is just amazing. Like you can see here, I've even got embedded websites. It's amazing. So what I did instead was I went over to my lecturer slides, which thankfully she's released, and I've just taken down all of the different subjects that are discussed in the lecture, and I'm just going to do the same now for all 8 of these lectures. So I finished the first one, which is on signals transmission, and then I'll do the rest for these as well. Okay, so it took a while, but I'm done now. I finished writing out literally the topics of every single lecture, I should say. And to be honest with you, I mean, looking at it is very overwhelming. I mean, it's got to be over 100 different topics. And the worst thing, I always knew communication systems. I mean, I knew there was no way beyond the satellite. I don't know anything about, signals, communication, how wireless works, none of that. I mean, it does help me that I'm 28 years old, and so I do remember, using phones when they had 2G data. I remember phones when they didn't have any data. So I remember 3G phones. So some of the things that are being discussed when I've looked through the lecture notes, some of them I'm like, okay, I remember this, and I can imagine. I remember hearing my lecturer talk about 3G, and she was saying that it was she was having to describe and show like the Sony Ericsson W810Is and stuff like that, and that was the phone. Those were the phones I had. But I can imagine for the other kids in my class who were, how old are they? 18, 19. They've never seen those phones probably. So, but yeah, looking at this, it's very overwhelming. The one thing that I just need to keep in mind is that I don't need to focus on any of these lecture 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. All I gotta do is just focus on my lecture 1, which is where I'm at right now, and just one at a time take each one of these topics. So that's gonna be my plan. I've finished communication systems in terms of writing out what's there. I've also done the analog electronics, got everything that's there. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go in here into my studies to-do list, and I'm just gonna work my way through my to-do list here. So for example, I've got watch YouTube videos on topics discussed in communication lecture 1. I also need to do the same for analog electronics, so I can just duplicate that and put analog lecture 1. And then so now what I can do is I just go over here and I say, okay, I'm going to watch a YouTube video on each one of these different things. If I do that over the next 2 hours, to be honest with you, I'll be more than up to date. And then I can just put in a decent session where I read through one chapter of a book. and I should be good to go for that lecture. So now it's just a case of planning my semester by way of keeping this to-do list up to date and making sure that I stay on top of all of the various different topics that that are going to be discussed in my lectures. And that's it, yeah. So that's how I plan for my semester. I'm pretty much ready to go now. What I probably will start to do is, for example, once I've finished, for example, reading about signals, I might just come over here and put a strike through and then continue like that. Yeah, so I think that's what I'll do. I've already learned about signals, so I'll leave that as a strikeout, and I'll just work my way through each one of these different topics in the from lecture 1, and then start striking them out. But before I do that, up next on my to-do list, I believe should be worksheet 1. Yeah, there we go. So that's what I'm going to get started on right now. So yeah, if you guys enjoyed this video, leave a like. This is how I prepare for my semester 2 in my second year. If you have any tips or anything that you do that you think could help, and if you use Notion and you do it a different way, you can always share your. So up here you can go to copy link, and you can post your link to your Notion or whatever it is that you do in Notion, and I'll be more than happy to take a look at it. I mean, I'm always up for learning. So yeah, thanks for watching, guys, and I shall see you in the next one.